Welcome to the Surviving BPD Relationship Breakup Podcast with your host, counselor, and trauma recovery coach, ajmahari. AJ has over 30 years experience specializing in recovery from BPD relationship breakups and offers expert knowledge, in-depth understanding delivered with compassion and empathy. To purchase and book sessions, please visit ajmahari.ca. Welcome to the show. Here's your host, ajmahari.
And just a little note up front at the beginning of this podcast episode that my magnificent dogs are in the room with me at the time of recording, and that two of them are older and quieter, etc., and that my magnificent puppy, 8.5-month-old Regal Rottweiler Toby, has a bone, so they won't make all kinds of other noise. So you're going to hear a little rummaging in the background just here and there of him enjoying a bone. Part of the listening experience, because I can't take the whole world around me out of the recording area, so to speak. Part of the podcast listening experience. Yes, the cold, I think, is starting to get a little bit better now, but it's been pretty wicked. Sorry that that's going to be part of your listening experience here in this episode as well. And I have endeavored to, as I did in the last podcast episode, there's lots of coughing and whatnot in between as I'm doing this, and my hope is that I do edit it all out so that you don't have to have that part of this experience. I know there's a lot of people that I know in my life and in my area that there's a lot of this stuff going around. So one could ask the question, has even the quote common cold unquote gotten a little more supercharged with other, elements of things? I don't know. I'm looking forward to smelling and tasting again, hopefully sooner than later, because I don't have that going on right now. Very strange experience. Anyway, have you been discarded by somebody with BPD? And maybe you're not sure if that's the final discard, you've been ghosted or discarded, and you don't know if it's all over or not. This has nothing to do with you, why this all happened. It's not your fault. It's their cycles and patterns and their problems. Or maybe that's played out, you've recycled, and it's not working out, and you're still in a really frustrating and painful place. Are you somebody who's still in love with that person with BPD? How do you handle, or how can you possibly not reach out? And you're likely feeling hopeless about them ever wanting to talk to you again. That, I think I need to get my ex back feeling and situation that so many people go through. Well, 3 things that you need to know right off the bat. Number 1, in the case of the silent treatment, if you're with somebody with quiet BPD, or even if it's not necessarily only the silent treatment, but the silent treatment or being raged at, blamed, yelled at, and told that you're the problem, you're the reason that nothing's working out, you did this, you did that, or like a lot of people with BPD these days are in the final or the semi-final, depending, devaluation, split to devaluation, to ghost, to discard. There may be a lot of words from those who aren't quiet borderlines, the more petulant type, and they'll call you a narcissist, and they'll say this, that, and the other thing about you. And not that they all have, not all with BPD have NPD, comorbidity or traits, but they're definitely going to be accusing you of everything. So it can be the silent treatment where they just disappear, and that is, treating you really poorly and inexcusable, and so there'll be a lack of communication, and then they have this way of avoiding, and they don't take personal responsibility, and they don't really understand, really, in an emotional way, in any adult age congruent way, what they're doing, in a sense, and so, or why they're doing what they're doing. And they also don't understand their effect on you, nor are they really concerned about that, unfortunately. So they really won't admit that they did anything wrong or anything was their fault, because they actually don't even see that. But you need to know that it definitely wasn't the way that they left you believing that it was. And that means that they really didn't love you. They really couldn't attach to you the way that you thought that that was reality, or you experienced that. And then also what they say, or the silent treatment they give you in a split evaluation, ghosting or discard, that might be final, but it's hard to know that. Well, when they slam that door in your face, it's really better that you leave the door slammed shut. And that's, you're going to have to deal with the cognitive dissonance. You're going to have to deal with the rumination, the feelings. Your feelings are going to be beyond really hurt. And people lose themselves in these relationships. It's important to know that that lack of closure is really, it doesn't feel like it at the time, but it's a gift of opportunity to get into working with someone, to understand this, to be able to heal the codependency, etc., and heal from the relationship, so that you won't want to keep going. You might still feel like you want to go back, but you need to realize in your head that it's not going to be any different. These relationships don't work out, and it's not healthy for you to want them back. And the second really major thing is any attention or begging or pleading will empower them. Well, in a way, yes, it could, but then again, some people can't even get their attention to try to plead, to try again, or understand, or get closure. And I work with so many clients, and I'm out here to work with you if I resonate with you, who sometimes after no contact or being ghosted or discarded, just want to make contact again to get that X, to understand how much they hurt you, and how much, they've hurt many clients that have reported this to me. And we have to work through this so that they don't make that contact. And why would that be? And so it's important that you don't do that, because you're not going to get heard. And people with BPD don't take personal responsibility. So in essence, do they really care about what you're feeling after they ghost or discard you? The answer is no, but more to the point, they didn't really care what you ever really felt when you were in the relationship either. So they mirrored you in the beginning to get what they needed and to try to be that chameleon, who they thought you wanted them to be, because they don't know who they are. So they did that to try to get, quote, love, unquote, and attention. And it felt so good, because people with codependency have a higher need to be seen and heard, because you have a woundedness in childhood often where you weren't seen or heard enough. People with BPD do have needs that are so deep, so profound, so primal. And I'm not saying anything they do in trying to meet these needs it's not always conscious, but it's not excusable either, how they treat people. But the key thing there is they do need more than anybody can possibly give. And when you get into a relationship with somebody with BPD, despite the adult component of physical relations, they're so childlike in so many other ways that you become, as I've said before, that object of their parent representation, and they keep re-experiencing you that way, and they don't actually see and hear you. And the third major thing to know is, often they've done this before to someone else. They've tried to have a relationship. This cycle has played itself out with someone before. And remember, not all people with BPD or suspected BPD but undiagnosed, but the patterns are there. Some are more clingy and needy, so they don't all, in that devaluation split, ghost or discard. But for those who do, many do that, it's important that you realize that you're probably not the first person, and you're not going to be the last person, that they go around this repetition, compulsion, unconscious cycle of trying to get love and love, but they don't know how to attach. They don't have a self from which to attach. They don't receive your love, and they don't know how to actually love in any healthy adult congruent way. And then, after they ghost or discard you, can often come Hoovers, but not always. Some people with BPD will not Hoover back. But when they do Hoover, make no mistake about it, and I have other videos up that you can listen to or watch, depending if I was on camera or doing audio, that talk about the BPD Hoover is all about them. What they want, what they need, and they don't really think about, or perhaps don't even understand, but rarely ever give you a real apology as to what happened. They might give you something that sounds like what you want to hear, but it's not really real. Like they might say, "Oh, I promise I'll go to therapy. I'm sorry that like what happened or something vague like that." Or even if they say something more specific, they're saying what they know you want to hear so they can pull you back in again for what they need. And if they're worried about, often Hoovers begin with things like, can be a text message, and it can be like, how are you? I'm worried. Are you doing okay? That's fake concern, because it's a projection out of their state. Sorry, they're worried about how they're doing, and they want you to help them to be them again, right? They want to seek identity through you again, potentially. But there's nothing about that Hoover that's going to be for you or different or mean the relationship the next try is going to work or the 10th try. Is not the case, because they don't change without treatment. That takes really a lot of years. And so if they keep coming back to you every few months or after a couple weeks or a year later or 3 years later, they're still going to be wanting to get back into the same kind of situationship, painful situation of using you and calling it, quote, love, unquote. And many aren't aware that they're doing this using in that way. And many people with codependency wanting the ex back, you're not really maybe looking at it like for how much you've been used yet, versus that you weren't attached to and you weren't really seen or heard or loved for who you are. The borderline approach avoidance conflict, fear of abandonment, fear of engulfment, fear of abandonment, fear of intimacy, is really real, and it takes years in therapy for them if they're going to work it out at all. So you have to really think about yourself, which is hard for people with codependency, and the excessive focus, if you're in that place right now, on the person with BPD who might have ghosted or discarded you, is the codependent way, unconsciously often, trying to protect yourself from all the pain you're in. And it's not that you want to be in more pain, but it's like, but you want that person back because they would serve as a distraction. And this isn't why maybe you feel so much like you want them back, but what's underlying the reasons why you feel you want them back, and it could work out or you got to try again, often is just a reality that you are unconsciously trying to avoid your own pain. And so looking to get back with them and thinking maybe in some massive denial way that it could work or get better or go back to the way it was in the beginning. And this isn't really the way these relationships work at all. People with BPD do have repetition compulsion cycles, and each person's can be a bit different, but they're not coming back to show you anything different. They're not different, and they're not changed, and you're going to have the same experience over again. And some people say it's important to pretend you don't care. No, it's more important to get to a place, reach out, work with someone like myself. I'm out here to work with you if I resonate with you, to work through the feelings of why you're giving so much focus and importance to that person with BPD. And it's really involved and complicated, but it's not all about that person with BPD. Why you feel like you can't stop ruminating about them and you need to get them back, or it's going to drive you off the edge, so to speak, because a lot of clients report to me they can't function, they have trouble doing their jobs, they can't stop thinking about this person. But that doesn't mean that that's healthy, or that you should go back or take them back after these breakups. And they'll say things like, well, don't let her know that you care. Pretend that you don't really care is your only play. Well, that's not even healthy for you to do to yourself, let alone, this is what men are told too much, right? Like, no, you have a right to how you feel. And you need to be able to understand and explore more how you really feel and where that's coming from in a dualistic way. It's not just from that borderline X or, hopefully to stay X. It comes also from childhood woundedness. So I recommend, I strongly say to any man who's in a lot of pain right now, just like any woman or anyone else, you need to be able to get in touch with your emotions, and you need to be honest with yourself And so, therefore, if you're trying to get your ex back or they hoovered you, don't do that sort of unhealthy masculinity thing that men have learned, unfortunately, in childhood sometimes, of like, well, just don't let her know how you feel. Pretend you're fine. Look strong. So this is the dilemma for many men, especially, is, you're hurting, and all men handle this differently. Some men really want to express their hurt and pain to the borderline ex and want to get heard to make it better so you can try again. But the thing is, they never hear you, and they don't really see you, and they don't really care about you the way that you might well care about them. And so, if you do share your vulnerability with the borderline ex, whether male or female, but I'm just saying this in particular for men right now, then it's likely going to not be well received because they're all about what they need and what they want. And if you don't, and you pretend that you're not affected by it, that's not going to be helpful to you either. And there are some men out there online now that are trying to tell men that this is the kind of game you got to play with your emotions. Be a tough guy, or don't tell them how you feel, because if you play the tough guy role and you don't, you pretend and you show them like you don't care, you don't need them, you don't want them anymore, when that's not really how you're feeling, that somehow that's going to make them feel more abandoned and make them come back and all this kind of rather manipulative claptrap stuff. It's not in anybody's best interest to listen to or follow. And a key thing is when they devalue you, get to that split to devaluation that leads to the ghosting or discard in many cases, they've already shown you what they really think about you, right? That they don't value you. And what is the challenge there for people with codependency? You don't have the highest self-esteem or self-worth in the first place. You have to think about that too, because they're not really going to take in anything you say if there is that opportunity to communicate again, which I recommend people really try not to open the door to that. So they've proved they're not worthy of you. You need to know that you're worthy of much more than the way the borderline ex treated you. And getting closure really is what can happen in a healing and recovery process, because that closure is going to come more from the work of family of origin work and healing the wounded inner child than it's ever going to come from the ex with BPD. And so there's a way to find your own closure in a process, and that's how I work with clients. That's also part of that process. People with BPD don't really remember how good you were to them, like a lot of people say. They're just doing what it is they do, which is not excusable, but they need you to seek identity through. They need to use you in many ways. They need to re-experience you as object other. None of this is any good for you. None of this is about them loving you or being attached to you at all. They don't remember how well you treated them because they get into this black-white place, right? The black of the all negative cancels out anything that was positive or good that you gave. And so many people who are the ex of somebody with BPD now really gave a lot. And often they will come back to Hoover because they've been dumped or they've ghosted and discarded another person who might. A lot of people with BPD get involved with narcissists at times, and people with codependency other times. But it doesn't matter who the other man or woman is, depending on if you're a man with a female BPDX or a woman with a male BPDX. It doesn't really matter who they were with before or who they go on to, and doesn't work out, they come back to Hoover and you need to know you're sloppy seconds or thirds or fourths at that point, and you're worth much more than that. So other things that you need to know about having been ghosted or discarded, and then why you need to go no contact and not let all these Hoovers happen, and how you need to work with someone to be able to help yourself with all this pain and agony and rumination and cognitive dissonance and lack of closure and much more, which is really, really painful stuff. That this has nothing to do with you, why this all happened. It's not your fault. It's their cycles and patterns and their problems. And that in a way this is disguised could be the greatest day of your life to move forward, to get into healing recovery process, and to get out of this cycle. that you might have been in more than one relationship, or more than one recycle revolving door situation and those kinds of things with one BPDX. And you're stronger than you think you are. And does it matter if you're stronger than them? Like, I wouldn't do that comparison. And even if you feel humiliated and you're not sure what to do with any emotions, it's not about win-lose. It's not like the person with BPD won and you lost. And nobody wins in these situations. The next person, it's going to be the same dynamic and the same cycle over and over and over, because that's what happens with untreated people with BPD. And the other thing that's really key, but can be hard for some people to hear, the borderline, when they were with you in the first place, when they maybe try to hoover back if you don't go no contact, it has nothing to do with your money, although they might have wanted that, right? But it has nothing to do with your money, your physical appearance, or your personality, because it has everything to do with all that they lack and what they're trying to get from other people. And often I've had clients ask me, well, like, they have careers, they have their own business, they're doing well financially, they're good-looking women. If they were with a male borderline, they're often really good-looking men. Not that that's the most important thing, but I've had a lot of clients say, but here's all that I offer, and all that I offered, right? And they're like, what's wrong with me? Why did this happen? Well, the thing is, even if you really are doing well in a career, you have your own business, money isn't an issue for you. Whether it is or isn't doesn't matter. But if you're doing really well and you are, a really attractive woman or handsome man, and you have a lot to offer with your personality, and you care a lot and you give a lot, and of course with codependency you overgive. The bottom line is, I've had clients that go, well, so my ex now is with this guy who, like in the case of a man, would say, many men have said to me that their ex, when they were ghosted and discarded by their person with BPD, they end up like living on the street with like somebody who's down and out, got no money, no career, no job, probably a really bad substance abuse habit, etc. So, and then I've had clients go like, how could she leave me for that? But it's not really about you. And that can be painful too, in a way, because you're not really seen or heard. And one day, when you do work with someone and work this through and heal, you're really going to look back and you'll be grateful this happened to you. There's a silver lining in this horrible, agonizing experience, but you won't be able to realize what that is unless and until you go no contact and stop the recycling. Stop the hoovering, reverse hoovering. You need to really make an action step that feels impossible to make, for lack of a better way to put it. And if you were single before in your life, you can do that again. And many people with codependency who've been in a relationship with maybe more than one person with BPD or a narcissist, and then from one relationship to the next, there are many people with codependency who need to land in the next relationship really quickly. This is just a recipe to finding the next cluster B. People have to be really careful to stop that cycle, even if you're moving away from the borderline X and you're jumping too quickly into the next relationship. Not everybody with codependency fears being alone, but a lot of people do. You will be able to heal, and much more quickly than they ever will, if they will ever even seek to heal. You will come out of this in a way that you will be the one that triumphs if you stay true to wanting to be on your own healing recovery journey. And actually, it's very true that deep down inside, people with BPD know that they're not good enough for you. And to some degree, they know that they just don't know how to do these relationships. So no contact is really the key to healing, or no contact when there's a child involved, and that is a whole lot of other strategy and can present many levels of complications. And so that needs to be part of a healing and recovery journey as well. So your mission now is to not only get back to yourself and who you were before this really painful, incredibly heartbreaking and wrenching experience that you've had, and that what you're going through right now, you can get back to who you were. More importantly, you can get back to being. So through the healing and recovery journey, that I help clients with, you can get back to, not only back to who you were and knowing yourself more, but knowing yourself even more than you did before the person with BPD, because people with codependency tend to have a bit of loss of self from childhood woundedness, and this is often correlated with why people with codependency often get into these relationships with people with BPD or NPD. And remember, there's a shame wound people with codependency have, but how they ghost and discard you and split you to devaluation, and then you become, quote, the enemy, unquote, you become like the worst, like the bad guy. And I say that as in general, meaning a woman becomes, quote, the bad guy, if you know what I mean. That is their shame projected all over you more than it's even your own shame. But it could go back to shame from childhood woundedness. But you have no need to feel ashamed of what just happened, because you didn't do anything to deserve what just happened to you, and you need to heal it. And it's definitely their loss, even more than it's a loss for you, but it is a loss for you. And that needs to be processed and healed too, and I don't want to minimize that for anybody. But it is big time their loss. But yes, if you're the ex right now, it's a big loss for you too. And many people with codependency struggle with loss and have fear of abandonment in their own right. If you've been ghosted or discarded, it's really important to consider what I've said here and to be aware of these points and to get into a healing recovery journey so that you can work this through, understand, learn, and grow more, so that you won't have to go and recycle it or recycle it again, and keep, in a way, unconsciously, quote, volunteering, unquote, to just keep getting the same kind of hurt that really goes back to your family of origin and the wounded inner child as to why that's going on in an unconscious way inside of you, that you keep pursuing for other reasons, or the reasons you believe you're pursuing that ex with BPD or re-pursuing them again. And it's just a recipe for more and more pain. So I hope that was helpful. And sorry about the cold. Maybe it'll go away one day sooner rather than later, hopefully. And take care.
You've been listening to the Surviving BPD Relationship Breakup Podcast. Our passion is to bring expert information for people that are hurt or traumatized by someone with BPD. We truly hope you've gotten something from the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. For more or get sessions with AJ, go to ajmahari.ca. See you next time.